Hello, I'm David Chaston with 90 at 9, brought to you by interest.co.nz. This is where you get everything you need to know in 90 seconds at 9 o'clock, with news the growing US budget deficit has claimed a major scalp. Firstly, however, American consumer prices fell marginally in March from February because of a brief drop in the cost of petrol, but underlying inflation actually picked up. The overall index is up 2.4%. Prices rose 2.1% if you exclude fuel and food, and that is the fastest rise in that measure in 13 months. In Washington, D.C., all of the US Federal Reserve's policymakers felt that the American economy would firm further and that inflation would rise in the coming months, minutes of the central bank's March policy meeting showed. Meanwhile, the US federal government's budget woes are getting worse. In the fiscal half year to March, they recorded a deficit of $0.6 trillion, which is 14% higher than the same period the previous year. The March result alone was 18% worse. Irresponsible tax cuts depressed revenues while spending rose, and will only get worse from here. It was too much for the Republican leader of the House of Representatives, Paul Ryan, supposedly a fiscal hawk, who announced his retirement. In China, the pace of car sales is rising after a relatively slow start to the year. Sales in March were up 4.7% from the year earlier, a sharp acceleration from the 1.7% pace of January and February. In Australia, the NAB Chief of Staff, Rosemary Rogers, is under investigation in a major fraud on the bank involving property investments worth millions of dollars. Tax authorities are seizing her assets, including a trophy home. And staying in Australia, the head of their central bank says the next move in official interest rates will almost certainly be up, even if it won't come for a while. But it will come as a shock to some borrowers because there hasn't been a rise in over 7 years. US Treasury 10-year yield is a little lower today, now at 2.79%. The Chinese 10-year is at 3.75%, which is a 2% rise, and the New Zealand 10-year is at 2.81%, which is a 1 basis point fall. Gold is up $11 to $1,350 an ounce today. Oil prices are up again today as well by more than $1, with the US benchmark now just under $67 a barrel, while the Brent benchmark is just over $72 a barrel. This is the highest in more than 3 years and comes after Saudi Arabia said it had intercepted missiles over Riyadh and international tensions over Syria grew. Currency is little changed, however, since this time yesterday at 73.6 US cents. On the cross rates, we're at 94.9 Aussie cents and 59.5 Euro cents. That puts the TWI at 74.7. I'm David Chaston. That was 90 at 9, brought to you by interest.co.nz.